So I'm just going to post up his session now. So we are going to start his session shortly. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Can you hear me okay? Hi. Hi. We'll just wait for if in case there are anyone else who wants to join this session. There's about like 2 minutes left. So we'll wait for a moment before we begin. Okay. All right. Okay.
Are you going to tell jokes while we wait?
No, not really. We could for the time being. I mean, it is about storytelling. Okay. All right. I think yes. Just a reminder. So those of you who are just joining us, if you have any questions for the session, do kindly type your questions in the Q&A. It's a small, like a double bubble icon next to the chat. I will be receiving your questions from that end, and I will present it to Mr. Irwan at the end of his sharing. Okay. Okay. So, all right, we can begin shortly. So, all right, everyone hear me good? Okay. So, a very good morning, everyone. Yeah. It is now 11 a.m. And this session will go on to 12 p.m. until afternoon. I hope that everyone has enjoyed our earlier sessions for today with the talk that was just concluded by Prof. Huang and her students from Taiwan. I think if I'm not mistaken, they are still around. So if you do have any questions, you can keep the chat going. And also earlier, much earlier, on adaptations of folk tales by Tutu Duta. So now for this next hour, I'm very proud to present our next speaker, Irwan Junaidi, currently a producer, director, writer, as well as co-founder at the R&D Studio, which he co-founded in 2011. I first met Irwan very briefly, almost a decade ago when I was starting a film project with one of our former business acquaintances. I did not really get in touch with him until quite recently again. And I must say, an interesting piece of information that I found really amusing is that animation was not his first choice when he first embarked on his studies. He, in fact, has a postgrad diploma in architecture from the UK, even winning student competitions and having his design work exhibited at the Royal Institute of British Architects. So it's a very diverse field, but it was his passion for storytelling, world building, inspired by our local community here in Malaysia and even Southeast Asia, that drove him to pursue in a career in animation. To date, he has produced television series, telemovies, short films, documentaries, music videos, and commercials for partners such as Disney, WarnerMedia, Tokyo Broadcasting System, Astro, Primeworks, and RTM, as well as some corporate clients and also agencies. Today, he'll be sharing juicy morsels of information on the process of making two short films that he garnered international acclaim. Batik Girl, which marks his directorial debut, and also one more recently released, Dalang's Tale, which carries a relatively sensitive theme of domestic violence. I think a very pertinent issue in this current social climate. So once more, before we begin, I would like to inform all attendees that if you do have any questions, type it in the Q&A section of the Zoom application. It's down below. It is different from the public chat window. We would appreciate if you can direct questions there so that I can present them to him after his sharing. We have about 15 to 20 minutes or so to address any queries that you have. So let's everyone give a kind of virtual round of applause to welcome the virtuoso himself. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Mr. Irwan Junaidi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Eugene. Thank you for inviting me to this talk, actually. So I'll be talking about local stories for a global audience. So my name is Irwan Junaidy, and I'm a producer, director, writer. So my first memories of doing something creative was playing with Legos. I remember that I'll, take the Lego out of the box and I'll follow the instructions once, and I'll dismantle all the Legos and I'll put it in a bigger box where all my Lego pieces are, because I wanted to create my own designs. I wanted to tell my own stories around the Lego characters. So this is me and my younger brother. So you can see my fancy spaceship there, while his looks quite bad. But that's because I'm bigger than him, so I took all the best pieces. But the lesson here is no, don't bully your brothers. So I went to boarding school, and I wasn't a very good student. So I was always in the last class. And after my SPM, I applied for a scholarship. But because my results weren't good, I could only get into town planning. I wanted to do architecture because to me, architecture was, kind of like a cool job. You get to design stuff, but I couldn't get because my physics was bad. I failed my maths, so I could only get into town planning. And I'm guessing that nobody wanted to go into town planning, so it was just me applying for town planning. But I took the scholarship, and during my first year, the first week of classes, I actually went to the architecture department. I talked to the head of department and I said, "Sir, I'm an architect. I'm not a town planner." And I showed him some designs. I showed him buildings I just designed, just sketched out. I remember I sketched out a mosque with a dome made of lasers, because I was telling him that the birds won't come in because the lasers will zap the birds before they could come in. And funnily, he said, "Yes, you are an architect." He wrote a letter to GPA, my sponsor, and GPA actually changed my major from town planning to architecture. So that's the first lesson I'm going to share with you. If the road is not presented to you, build your own one. I didn't have the results to get into architecture, but I really wanted to do it, so I had to build my own road to study architecture. So I studied architecture in the UK. I did my degree, my undergrad in Huddersfield, and my part two in University of Greenwich. This is University of Greenwich. It's been attacked by night elves, so we didn't get to do any much studying there. Jack Black also visited us. Also Jack Sparrow. So it's kind of like a university that's always had Hollywood around. And during the studies, I love designing buildings, but I didn't like the practice of architecture. I didn't like dealing with contractors. I didn't like dealing with bylaws and all those boring stuff. So I stumbled upon things like Blade Runner, the designs, the biomechanical designs of H.R. Giger, Lebbeus Woods, Salvador Dali's surrealism. And I knew that I didn't just want to design buildings. I wanted to design interesting worlds. I wanted to tell stories in these interesting worlds. So I came back to Malaysia. I had a bit of detour. I I started a games company with my friends, and after a few years, started this company with another friend from college, from high school actually, and we call our company the R&D Studio. So there's 15 of us in the company at the moment. What is interesting is because I'm from outside the industry, I study architecture, so I kind of have like a soft spot for people who studied something else, but they want to do films and animation. So in our company, there's a lot of people from other fields of expertise. They studied law, they studied medicine. We have a mechatronic engineer. We have a couple of software programmers. We have graphic designers, but we are all doing animation and live action stuff now. So across, since we started operations in 2012, we've had the fortune of working with clients, local clients, all the broadcasters in Malaysia. as well as a few international companies such as Walt Disney Company and WarnerMedia. Some of the stuff that we made. So we do stuff for everyone. We do stuff for RTM, we do stuff for Astro, we do stuff for, you know, giant world entertainment companies like Disney. So the first few projects I did was horror. We've done documentaries, we've done Malay films, we've done short films, we've done, you know, anything that pays the bills and also allows us to tell stories. These two projects are quite close and dear to me because I produce, you know, all the stuff. We've produced about 16 films and TV series and about 250 short form content. But once in a while, I do direct and write. So these are the two things which I directed. And I wrote the Dalang still as well with some friends. So about the company, in 2012 until 2014, we went to this phase called, we name it phase one. It's called the short sendiri. Short sendiri is a Malay term for self-indulgence. We did something that we wanted to do. We didn't like consider the client. We didn't consider audience. It's just something that we wanted to do. And boy, it was so hard to get money to make this film. But we actually won something from South Korea. We won this prize in SPP, Seoul Promotion and Planning, 2014, 10,000 USD. So this was our first international success based on the proposal of that short film and our trailer. In the next 3 years, we did something what we call the phase two, which is out west the West. What I mean is we tried to do things which the West was doing, but of course we weren't good enough. You know, we even had like a blonde character as one of the leads in Ifins. And, you know, again, you cannot challenge Disney, you cannot challenge Cartoon Network, you cannot challenge Nickelodeon because they've been at it for much longer than us and they can do much better work from us. So 5 years, we were like struggling to find a voice, struggling to find something that can, you know, travel outside Malaysia. And it was in 2018 when I had the pleasure of pitching this IP called Jungle Magic in Australia, in Korea, and in France. Jungle Magic is as Malaysian as it gets. The first character there is Omar. He has a cloud on his head. He's the son of a shaman, a Bomo, a weather shaman. So the first cloud that he summoned wouldn't go away. So he stuck with that cloud. There's Aiden, the middle boy there. He's half fairy, or in Malay, half Bunyan. And we have Marissa, who's a were-tiger. So Aiden was sent to live with his grandfather in a kampong. So very Malaysian. And it was interesting because we had really good feedback for this project. In NSC, if you guys are not aware, is the top most festival for animation in the world. And we were the first Malaysian project selected to be pitched there out of 350 projects from around the world. So I presented in NSC in front of audience, about 200 people, and there was like really good feedback. And there was even somebody who approached me after I presented and said, I actually looked online to see how expensive was a ticket to Malaysia. So here we knew that stories, you know, local stories could travel and could have an impact on people. We completed Jungle Magic, so it's a 26 episode TV series, and we're now shopping around for a broadcaster for the series. It just proves that local stories can travel. And a year before we pitched in NSC, Moana came out. It's about Pacific Island. You know, it's brown people as the subject of the show. It earned Disney 540 million in box office. Same year we pitched, Coco came out. It's about the Mexican Day of the Dead, Mexican culture, something which is very different than what we see from Hollywood at that time. So a lot of people would ask me, where do we get ideas? And the simple answer is ideas are everywhere. Batik Girl, my first short film, was actually born in Italy in Bologna Children's Book Fair. We were there just to scout around. Me and my writer Heidi. We were there, and we were at the Malaysian pavilion. I'm not sure if Tutu was there during this time. The Malaysian booth is full of interesting books, colorful books, and there was this incident in which we saw these two uh, European couple, quite elderly, 70 years old, something. They were looking at the desk, and on the desk was a batik tablecloth, and they were talking to each other and were pointing at the tablecloth. And me and Heidi, we were like, "What are they looking at?" And we were like, "Maybe there's something moving on the batik tablecloth." And that became the idea for the Batik Girl sequences inside the batik world. For the Dalang still, we wanted to do something which is, has wayang kulit in it, but we didn't have a story until I gave this quote to my designer. It's by Sela Le Guin, an author. To light a candle is to cast a shadow. And she actually did sketches, and one of it was a man with fire on top of his head. And that just sparked the idea of doing the domestic violence as a topic of the short film. And we after that we developed the story further. So ideas are from everywhere. You just need to train yourself to look around you, to question the what, the why, the when, the how. And usually there will be ideas. And my tip is to actually write those ideas straight away in your phone or a notebook, because ideas are fleeting. They're like butterflies. Once you have a good idea, there's a chance that you will go away. There's so many ideas that I had, and because I didn't have anything to write, and I'm Mr. Forgetful, ideas are gone. So sad. Once you have an idea, you have to go deep down into research, because research is important. We don't know things about our, whatever story that we want to do. So for Batik Girl, it's obviously about batik. And we did research. We went to Kuala Terengganu, and Heidi actually visited a solo batik artist called Kaza, and looked at how things were done, how her workshop was. And we had ideas from here, because, we had an abstract idea. We did batik in art class when we were in school, but this is the real deal. And the bottom right, the picture where you have the swing in the middle of the ocean, that wasn't in our initial idea, initial story, but it was so cool because during high tide, it's covered water, but low tide, you can walk. There's sand there. It had to be in our show, so it was too cool to ignore. We put the swing set in the short film, and a very specific scene inside the short film was set there, and was very important, very pivotal to the main character. So my 6 years of doing architecture wasn't wasted. So I did sketches on the layout, what should the workshop look like. And I brought up all my old architecture books to do some designs on the house. So we modeled this in Blender. All the joints are true. It's also a Terengganu house. If you're from Terengganu, you can recognize certain details, certain layouts, in which you'll know that this is specifically from Terengganu. So things were done in Blender. Then we painted over it. We could test the lights, the mood. And we actually took a picture of the night sky in Kuala Terengganu because we wanted to be authentic. We wanted some astronomer to look at the night sky and say, oh, this is in Kuala Terengganu. But it looked really boring, so we exaggerated. So when you do research, you want to be authentic, but sometimes, creative license overrules it. For batik, we looked at the motifs. We talked to batik practitioners, we talked to batik artists, and from there we easily could get idea for what happens in the batik world. For example, the daun berjalan motif, which is creeping vines, and we knew that if it's a creeping vine, it will move like a snake. and all the other shapes of the leaves will be swaying in the leaves. So it informed us during the animation process. We did concept art based on all these motifs. And for the other part of the batik world, which is the ocean part, we looked at the equipment that is used in drawing batik. So in batik, you use a chanting, which is like a stylus, brass stylus, and you have a point where the melted wax comes out. So there is this thing called a multi-spout chanting where you can draw parallel lines, and that's like for us, okay, that's water, and we tried to put it into our designs as well. We looked into other motifs. Mega Mendung is a motif in batik. We looked at different types of batik. There's this type of batik called crack batik or batik retak, in which you crumple the batik cloth and you have this nice cracked texture, which we thought they look like rocks, and we put it into the mountain scenes. So for the Dalang still, it was funny because I wanted to do something not so colorful, because Batik Girl was, colorful, happy, and I said, let's do something really heavy. And boy, this was tough actually. For Batik Girl, we did research for 8 months, and production was 4 months. For the Dalang still, my research and writing took 2 years, and the production was about 6 months. Why we took 2 years for doing the Dalang still is one, there was a lot of research that we put into this. Number two is because it's a heavy topic, and when we talk to people who are around cases of domestic violence, we talk to people who are survivors of domestic violence. It's such a heavy topic that we had to take time outs. We would do interviews, we would talk to people, and then we find all these horrific stories that actually happens, and we say, okay, let's take 3 months and not think about this. So we have the luxury of doing that, but people in those situations, they do not, especially now during MCO, where you're stuck in a house, you can't go anywhere. So there are a rise in cases in domestic violence, and it's a real thing, and we hope that things can be done to stop this. So there's 2 parts of the Dalang still, because there's the presentation layer, which is wayang kulit, and there's the story itself about domestic violence. So me and my writing partner and also co-director Maizura, we're really into wayang kulit, and we've always talked about doing something around wayang kulit, and we've always said that if we do wayang kulit, we did not want to do a Balinese wayang kulit story. Balinese wayang kulit is this. The design is different. The arms are slender, it's more angular, it's more refined, because Balinese wayang kulit is actually for the court. So it's a kind of like a royalty thing. But we wanted to be more marhain, the Malay term, more for the people. So we went for Kelantanese wayang kulit. So Kelantanese wayang kulit is linked to the Thai wayang kulit. The designs are more, I don't know, it's more rounded. It's not as angular as the Balinese one. And one of the big differences, there's color in Kelantanese wayang kulit, because some of the panels in the puppets, they have translucent plastic. So when the light shines, it casts colored shadows. And we looked at not just superficially, as a cutout, as a silhouette. We looked at how, when you look at a proper wayang kulit, there are certain things which is very evident. For example, there's a distortion through movement. So when the dalang moves the puppet, it doesn't look like a puppet. It looks like a weird shape, because the movement, the eye doesn't capture the movement. It's like, or the technical term is like a motion blur. And There's holes in the puppet, obviously, and also there are certain parts which is in focus, certain parts which is blurred, depending on how far it is from the light source near the dalang. We looked into how domestic violence, there's different parts of domestic violence. So we talked to experts about this. We talked to Ivy Josiah, who's the co-founder of Women's Aid Organization, WEO, who helps women in domestic abuse situations. And she has worked with survivors for more than 15 years. And when we first approached her, we were hesitant to actually put a abuse scene, because in our minds, what if it triggers something to viewers or especially survivors? But she said, it's, you have to put this, you have to put this, you have to show people what actually happens in abuse. If it's a live action thing, it might be too horrific, too literal. So if we do it in animation, there is that, there's a filter through it. So you don't see it as it actually happens, but you know what actually happens. So one of the central tenets of domestic violence, what is important is abuse is about power and control. It's not about about sexual abuse or things similar to it. It's about power and control, and we wanted to show power and control in the short film. So again, looking back at the puppets in wayang kulit, they have holes. So we put the dad having rectangular, triangular, very sharp holes to it. We also put the mum having more rounded holes. Again, this is the visual language. The dad is very angular, signifying, he's kind of like a bad person, and the mum is more softer shapes. So she's the good person. So for this particular aspect about power and abuse, the dad actually takes a piece of the mother and puts it into himself. But the shape is not the same. He has this emptiness in him. He wants to fill it by having this control and power, but it never is a perfect fit. There's always emptiness in it. But at the same time, once you take that piece away from the woman, she is becoming emptier by the day. So we wanted to have this visually represented, and inspired by the things in what that we found in wayang kulit. And also note that there's only one light source in all our scenes in the dalang still, because in wayang kulit show, there's only one light source for the dalang to show for the puppets. There's also this issue of intergenerational cycle of violence. Kids who look at, who witnesses acts of violence, they tend to repeat it when they grow up. And in our short film, is reflected in how the little boy, you can see flashes of anger in him. You can see that, he gets angry easier because he sees his dad like that. And his dad in turn sees, his father. So in domestic violence situation, there is the element of you have to protect the kids, and so that they don't perpetuate the cycle of violence. One of the things which is also highlighted is there is a suffering in silence in mothers to protect their child. So you can see in this particular scene, the mother actually closes her mouth because she doesn't want the kid to know what is happening to her. She wants to protect the child from what is happening. She locks her in his room, and she suffers herself. And the other thing is the smallest thing will trigger abuse. In this particular scene, she accidentally drops a plate of rice, but that triggers the episode, the violence from the husband. So if we did not do our interviews, we did not visit Kuala Terengganu, did not talk to the experts, we would not find all these little things which makes our story, there is a message in the story and makes our story richer. So the next thing is you have to tell universal, multi-layered stories. You have to tell stories which is universal. And what I mean is the emotional core of the story can be understood by people anywhere around the world. So if somebody watches Batik Girl or the Dalang still, they know Batik Girl is about family love. It's about grieving and family. They know about the Dalang still is about domestic violence. It can happen anywhere. It can happen in South America. It can happen in Africa. So it's a universal story. And what I personally do to all my stories is to add subtext, to add, to make it more multi-layered. So in Batik Girl, it's based on batik tulis. So batik tulis is actually drawn batik. And drawn batik is when you use the canting, the stylus to draw. So you draw the designs on the cloth. There's also the colors. Colors, you brush, you use a brush and you put the colors on the design. But separately, it doesn't look that good. I mean, even it looks really bad, just the colors on your own. But when you put it together, it creates something beautiful. So we like this idea about having two separate things, which can exist on its own, but together, it's beautiful. And that is what we did with Batik Girl. Uh, the child Mas, she can stay, she's okay. I mean, she is suffering, but she's okay alone. The grandmother, she has her own life alone. But when you put them together, something beautiful is created. And we reflected this in the music, we created in the visuals, in having two separate things, but together it's beautiful. Even the music we have music which is in the real world, we have different music in the batik world. At the end, when the two are together, we merge the music, the motifs together. And Batik Girl is about circle of life as well. In the beginning, the little girl loses her family, her mom, her dad, in an accident. And at the end, she gains a new family in her grandmother. So circles is a big thing in Batik Girl. We put circles everywhere. She drew a circle in the sand. The position of people during the grave, during the burial scene is in a circle. So big deal, circles. And we wanted to reflect this in the narration as well. So we use what is called a ring composition. It's a literary device used in literature. It's also in the holy books, in the Bible, in the Quran, in which the starting point is mirrored at the end point. So the first scene is mirrored in the last scene. The second scene is mirrored in the second last scene, and we have a midpoint. And we did this with Batik Girl. The original family, the mom, the dad, and the girl. And the last scene is about her new family, the grandmother. We have the falling petals reflected. We had, Mas running away in one scene, and Batik Girl in the Batik world flies away. And it's a mirror to each other. And the middle is where the Batik world comes alive. So for the Dalang still, we looked into wayang kulit. Wayang kulit is such an amazing art form, and it's deep. There are things in it in which, when you do your deep research, you discover that there's so many cool things in it. One of the cool things that we thought was the pohon beringin. The pohon beringin, or the tree of life, is this spade-like puppet in which the Dalang uses to open the scene and close the scene, signifying the start and the end. So in the Dalang still, we have the ticket to the puppet show, which has the pohon beringin, the tree of life. And also the mother in the story has a cucuk sanggul, which is a hair ornament in the shape of a tree of life. So she ends her cycle of violence, by stabbing the dad using this cucuk sanggul. So the start and the end is signified by the cucuk sanggul, the tree of life. There's also conventions in wayang kulit, which is the good guy is always on the left, the bad guy is always on the right. So in all the scenes, the mom is always on the left and the dad is always on the right, except for one scene, the bottom right scene. This is a point of view scene of the boy, because the boy did not know what the mother went through. She was, a victim of domestic violence. But when he opens the door, the first thing he sees is the mom taking out, stabbing the dad with the Cucuk Sanggol, and in his mind, the mom is a bad person. The mom is a bad guy because after that, the dad runs away and they never see the dad again. So all these conventions, if we did not do this research and everything, we could not, try to put this in our film. And the the point of all this is, you have a good story. You have to tell a good story. You have to find the emotional core of the story. So stories that make you happy, makes you laugh, makes you smile, makes you sad, makes you cry. Those are good stories. For example, the first 5 minutes of Up, that's like a masterpiece of storytelling, non-dialogue, but it tells a story of how, the husband and the wife and what they went through, and it sets up the piece, the story for the whole movie. Uh, that's very emotional. You cry every time you watch it, and you add in more complexity, more layer into it, more subtext into it, and you get stories which can travel. Having multi-layered stories also help in because the conversations will continue. We have had master students, PhD students, uh, talking about Batik Girl, dissecting the Batik Girl, and to talk about all the things that we put in for us to make it cool, because we wanted to do it, but because we had all this interesting stuff that we put in Batik Girl, there's about 40 things which we put, which, probably people notice about half of it, but there's 20 other things which we put, which I'm still waiting for people to actually, pick up all these little things. And because of that, the conversation just continues. So once you've had your idea, you've done your research, you've told your interesting stories, it's time to release it to the world. So for Batik Girl, we had our world premiere at a PPR, a Project Perumahan Rakyat. So these are the low-cost housing in urban centers in KL. So this is in Taman Melati. And it was very scary for me because before this, before we released Batik Girl, it was all internal or close friends that seen Batik Girl. And it's internal and close friends. They wouldn't say anything bad about what you do. But these are kids, and kids, they have no filter. They'll just say whatever they want to say. And they watch Batik Girl, all 9 minutes of Batik Girl, and I was like nervous as hell, going around them, looking at their expressions. But we were happy. At the end, they were asking me questions, really pertinent questions, really questions that showed that they understood what was happening. Batik Girl is non-dialogue. So just by watching it, they could understand what was happening and you could get the message. And from that day onwards, we were like very confident that, okay, this is a story that, we did something good here. And I can't thank my friend Sunita, who was the festival director for KL Diversity, who, called me and said, hey, I'm setting up this thing at PPR to show some films. Do you have anything that you want to show? And I said, yeah, we just finished Batik Girl, and I want to show it to people, but this is perfect. Again, Batik Girl was done by, what the production was sponsored by a grant from MDEC. So this is the people's money, and I wanted, people to watch it first before it went on its festival. And we were blessed that it had a really good festival run. We were in 28 festivals around the world in 17 countries. And we won some awards along the way. What was more interesting was when, after the festival run, we put it on our YouTube channel and we had feedbacks from all around the world. So before this, it was only in festivals and it was very limited. Only people who went to festivals could see it. Once it was on our YouTube channel, people started to talk about it and we had feedback from everywhere. We even had the then Deputy Prime Minister, Wan Aziza, talking about Batik Girl. But our most important, I guess my favorite feedback was this. It's from an Egyptian girl. She said that it's the first time that she's seen hijabis portrayed as beautiful, normal people. And it restored her belief that she could make movies as an Egyptian Muslim girl. So this was like our Peter Parker moment. It's like, Uncle Ben, with great powers come great responsibility. And that just drove us to make more interesting stories that we could tell. So when we finished Dalang Still about 2 months ago, somebody actually passed the link to the Dalang Still, so to Ronnie Del Carmen. So Ronnie is the director, writer for Inside Out, a Pixar movie, and he's an Academy Award nominee, and he wrote such a nice thing to me about the Dalang Still. So again, getting this from a peer is like so awesome, and this is just a flag slide for me. We went to workshops. Batik Girl was in a workshop organized by NSC. We were chosen among some projects in Malaysia, and we went there with some other projects from Singapore, Indonesia, from Philippines. And this is my last slide. We also were invited to be on this workshop, American Film Showcase and the US Embassy in Luang Prabang in Laos 3 years ago. So our mentor was this gentleman called Aaron Warner. He's the producer of Shrek. He has 2 Academy Awards. He also produced Wish Dragon, which is now on Netflix. And also another gentleman called Arthur Fong, who is the concept artist for Kung Fu Panda 3. So we had 7 days with them, and I was developing a film project there. And I was doing my part 1, part 2, my act 1 and act 2 for for the treatment of the film. And I had trouble in my act 3. I couldn't figure out how should I end the film. And I went to Aaron and I said, Aaron, bro, he's a bro. You please help me out because I can't figure out my act 3. And he said he read my act 1, he read my act 2, and he said, okay. And then he opened his laptop and then he showed me what he was working on. He was working on this film, act 1, act 2, and he didn't have an act 3. So he said, I can't figure out my act 3 as well. And that was like, a moment which is like, it stuck with me. Mr. Hollywood, Mr. 2-time Academy Award, has the same problem as me. So what you have to do is you have to be confident. Our problems and people in Hollywood or people, if you, they face the same problem as us, but their playground may be Hollywood, their playground may be, playing with hundreds of US dollars to produce their shows and their films. Ours is maybe local, maybe much lesser budget, but we can be as good as them. So be confident in whatever you do, and your local content can travel to a global audience. So thank you so much. I've took about 40 minutes. I think I'm just in time. So if you want to touch base with me, I'm on LinkedIn. I write more about our projects, about the company, about my thought processes on LinkedIn. So, you can learn more from my LinkedIn. On my Facebook, funny cat pictures. So you won't learn anything there. All right. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Irwan. So I've actually just posted not long ago a link to your R&D YouTube channel. So those of you guys who want to watch these films, you haven't watched these films, so you should not have not watched these films. These are great films. You can go over to the YouTube page and watch it there, but don't do it now because we are not ended yet. You of course have a lot of questions piled up. I want to have questions of my own. But I'll start off a really easy one, which is someone asked about Jungle Magic. Is it on Netflix? What streamer is it on?
Oh, we're still shopping around for the best. Jungle Magic, I think for us personally, money is not the issue. It's where we can have the most maximum reach. So we're talking to a bunch of different broadcasters, international broadcasters at the moment. So we'll see who bites, who wants it on their platform, and then when it's up, then then I can spread the news.
It's a series, kan?
Yeah, it's a series. We completed season 1.
All right. So what's the format like? It's
26 by 11. Yeah.
26 by 11. Wow, it's a 11 episode. Okay, cool. All right. There is another question here. Hi, Rogue. What is your opinion on digital 2D cutouts that try to imitate wayang kulit? Is there opportunity for it to go further, more acceptance? Yang benar a big fan. There was a sign off at the end.
Okay, cutout animation has been around ages. In early 1920s, Lotte Reiniger, she's a German animator. She did one of the earliest feature film, and it's cutout. Snow White came nearly 10 years later, the first Disney movie. So cutouts has been around for a long time. I think if you have a good story and if it's a cutout, yes, you can travel. But I think you should do something different, not just purely cutout. One of our references was Harry Potter, and there was in Harry Potter the movie where about the brothers, where
they talk about how the three
the
one
yeah,
where
the Deathly Hollows,
the Deathly Hollows, correct.
Yeah, so that was inspired by wayang kulit actually.
Yes.
The animator actually looked into wayang kulit, but he had his take on it, and I thought that was really interesting, and moving away from just a pure cutout, and that was the route that we wanted with Dalang. We didn't want a pure cutout. We wanted to take the essence of wayang kulit, but have our own spin to it.
Right. Because some things would work and some things won't work, especially on the digital medium, right?
Yeah.
But you mentioned that story is important, and I guess that's the foundation of everything, lah, kan?
Yeah. Ultimately, everything's about story. Doesn't matter your format, doesn't matter, you do cutout, you do sand animation, story is king, if your story is bad, no matter how great your animation is, it is a bad piece. But if your story is good, I mean, look at South Park, their stories are excellent. But their jokes are really good, but that's, it's flat, 2D. Mouth flapping, what the hell is that?
I mean, I've got illustrations by my 6-year-old daughter that are more articulate, more detailed, but yet it's the story that counts, right?
Yeah, I think you should steal your daughter's design because they look interesting.
Okay, I have a question here from one of our panelists, our colleague. In pitching ideas to funders, which I think you do a lot, and in fulfilling market demand, can you share if there's anything that you and your team had to include or exclude from an original idea?
Okay. My other job description is professional pitcher. I've calculated actually the other day how many times I've pitched to people. Number is about 1,000.
Oh God.
So I pitch at least 3 times a week, and I've been doing it for quite some time. So there was a trend before in which people are looking for the next SpongeBob, the next whatever. But nowadays, when I talk to a lot of these broadcasters, they want something local. It can be reflected in Netflix. Lupin, that detective story, is a French story. It's in French, but it's a hit worldwide. So local stories, no matter where you're from, is if it's a good story, if it's told well, it's in demand. Even now, because viewing is democratized by the streamers. You can view anything, anywhere, anytime. So if it's something good, but it looks a bit different, then people are into it. The Korean dramas, they're traveling everywhere around the world. It's purely Korean. It's in Korean. But because they are interesting, universal stories, so the trend nowadays is to tell your own stories. Tell stories that only you can tell, and you can sell it much easier nowadays.
I mean, okay, I've got another question here by another audience, and I'm going to add to it as well.
Okay, sure.
So I'm going to combine the 2 questions again. So he's asking, Well, the Malaysian animation has its blossoming, or rather, it starts. I mean, origins with pioneers such as our dear Pak Hassan Muttalib,
Hmm.
Pak Hassan, and today with big studios such as Upin and Ipin, Agent Ali. Now, how do you see the future of Malaysian animation, and especially for my part of the question is, as you know, we have a lot of graduates going into
Hmm.
university, and a lot of them are very kind of drawn to the whole culture of anime.
Hmm.
And I'm just wondering, what's your take on this? Like, how is our industry going to develop? Is anime something that is good to cling on to? Will it help? Will it not help? How shall we approach this? And
Yeah.
overall, how would you think the industry is going to grow?
Yeah. We're kind of like in the middle of a
Mm,
crossroad. We look at the West, we have the Disneys, the Pixars, the DreamWorks, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, and we also look at the Ghiblis, the anime, uh, and we kind of like, personally, I'm kind of like influenced by both. Some of our work, they look very anime-ish, but I like the storytelling structure of the West, the three act structure and all those things. And I think that we should take the best from both worlds and do something which is kind of like unique that we can do. For Malaysia, before the pandemic, it was like a golden year for animation. Three films made nearly 100 million in the local box office, which is unheard of. Which is Upin Ipin, Siamang, Keris Siamang, then Bobo Boy 2, and Agent Ali. And because of that, we, indirectly, we had people approaching us, say, hey, I want to invest in a movie. Uh, what's a good thing? Because once you get numbers, when you have dollar signs, investment comes in. And that is only, going to elevate the industry. Uh, but again, we shouldn't ape what's happening in the West. We shouldn't have ape as things happening in the East and come up with our own stories and our own style and everything. For students that's graduating, there's two things which you can target. You can work locally, and there's going to be demand in 3D because all these three films were 3D, and that people see 3D as uh, something which is successful, so more investment will be on 3D projects.
mm,
2D, I love 2D. Our films are mostly 2D. We only have one 3D film, which is we just finished a couple of weeks back, Co-Apocalypse, which was done in using the Unreal Engine.
right.
So I think personally, 2D, you can have, you get a lot more interesting stories 2D cheaper. If
Mm,
you want to do 3D, it's more expensive with the simulations, with the
yeah.
physics, and it's something which, I don't think technically we're there yet. So why not explore 2D? So we are like, we flying the flag for 2D. Even though we're not an animation company, we outsource things to people in Malaysia or Southeast Asia, and we, there's jobs there. If you're studying animation, there are animation jobs, but also if you want to try something else, you want to do concept art, you want to do sound, music. Our music was done by
Andrew Bong.
Andrew Bong, who's based in LA, and he's into, let's fly the Malaysian flag in LA, and we there's so many opportunities on. And even if you're not in the animation industry like me, like half the people in the company, if the passion is there, and if you read filmmaking for dummies like what I did, and you watch enough films on YouTube, on TV, on Netflix, on all these places, you will catch, and you can
Right.
do it as well. So
Yeah.
it's a good industry to be in. And one of the things that I think personally is going to happen is the game engines will come and make
Right.
everything easier. it makes making animation much more easier now.
I mean, for me personally, Irwan, your company, I mean, we have so many Malaysian companies that are kind of producing animated films right now, and I think the majority of the popular ones, like this audience member actually mentioned, Upin and Ipin, Agent Ali, Bobo Boy, they're all 3D, and for me, yours kind of has a special place in my heart because it is 2D, and I am also very much taken by 2D, and I think like it's so important to actually hold that 2D flag as well, because you can see the potential of it even with companies like what's that sets? I think it's Cartoon Salon or
Cartoon Salon in Ireland is one of our companies that we admire, because they're a smallish company. They're not a studio company, and they've been doing things with every one of their film like Academy Award nominees. I actually talked to the publisher of the book Breadwinner. Is it the when I was in Bologna, she was telling me that Angelina Jolie was producing the show with Cartoon Saloon, and I was like, can I see some of it? This was like 3-4 years before it was released, but she said, it's an interesting story from Afghanistan, and Angelina Jolie's production company picked it up, wanted to do animation, and they choose Cartoon Saloon and 2D as the platform. So it was like, wow, okay, cool.
Yeah. That's why I mean, there's so much potential there, and I like how their tales are always about kind of decolonization of Ireland itself, and it's they are really just taking to the 2D medium and kind of making it very representational or symbolic in that sense. We don't want to be like the West or the Hollywood,
They're very proud of their Irish roots, because all their stories are from their legends, their fables.
Correct. So, and you can see their traditional motifs all on their films and stuff. Okay, another question here by Mei Ni Cheng. Are there any differences when it comes to trying to adapt or implement local content and culture into animation and live action? Would you have any take on that?
Why we are doing live action and animation is there's a lot of things we can't do in live action because of money, and we can do it in animation. So even in our show that we produce for Disney, Wizards of Warner Walk, we put Malaysian elements in it. There's toyos, there's jins, there's nenek kebayans, there's all this stuff which we can do, but we can only do it what we can afford to, using green screen, using VFX and all those things. So there are other things that we want to do, but we just can't do it technically. But in animation, sky's the limit. You can do anything you want. So that is why we do, all these projects that we want to explore something which is a bit more complicated, a bit more, abstract. We do it in animation and not in live action.
Okay. So now, Erwan, you came from a background which is very different. It was like architecture, right? So here's a question that is, I think quite pertinent, and I think no one else would be best to answer it other than yourself. Okay. What would be your advice for filmmakers who wish to do animation without having an animation background? Also coming from Victor Chen, who asked the previous question.
The idiots for dummies is key. I think what is important is you see, I'm a lazy dude. Okay, so I take the path of least resistance. I do something which is to me easy, to me is fun, and that's why I wanted to do design. Design was easy. All this doing film and animation, I think it's an easy job. It's a fun job. People are paying me to do this. I watch a lot of shows. For my short film, I watched 100 short films before I even looked at, embarking on doing something, a short film. So you have, in lieu of not having an education, in film school or animation school, you have to learn from somewhere else. You can learn from watching. That's what I did. I watched a heck lot of things. So I know I watch things usually twice. One is just to enjoy something, and the other one is to pause. Oh, what's
And
happening here at
study.
3 minutes, at 7 minutes? Wow, oh, the villain comes at 7 minutes. The villain comes at 15 minutes. Oh, okay, so the hero loses at 26 minutes. So the second time is always the dissecting and, looking at film more critically. And that becomes a habit, and you kind of know instinctively what to do in your own shows. But I kind of like, it's not a regret for me not going to film school, but I think the networking would be easier. I would know more people, my colleagues who would be doing film and everything. But I would, if you're doing film, I think go to the best schools, go to New York for your networking, go to LA to learn about film, so that networking is very important. Yes, you learn things in university, that's knowledge, you learn things on your own, but most of the time things happen because of the people that knows you, the people around you. And that's why things like this, it's, there is knowledge sharing, but if it's an actual event, there'll be more fun. You'll be talking to people, you'll be, you get to know each other first, and that would help you in your professional career. But I feel like it's not like if I can do it, lazy me can do this. I mean, smarter people like you guys can do it.
But I think it's the effort that there needs to be, that it's still studying in the sense that you dissecting the time and all that. Actually, there is that effort. I think a lot of people might think like in the arts you kind of just sit down and relax and just go, no. Yeah, there's
it's
a
not
lot
just
of,
relax. I mean, I read a lot of books. Yeah,
correct.
I read
You
a lot
read
of
a lot of
books.
books.
I watch musicals. I watch theater. I watch film. So I'm a avid consumer of all content. I read comics. There's comics all here. And once you consume enough content, you can create content.
Correct. And I think the idea of having a critical mind to study, that's really important as well. Yeah. Okay, we are up to actually 12, but I just have one last question which we will close with.
Okay, sure.
And we are lucky to have this extra slot because the next session will be at 2. So my last question to you is, now with this current pandemic, how are you guys doing work? Like, I'm curious, like, how is your studio running? And are you running at all?
Oh yeah. I mean, we did work from home before work from home was announced in March last year.
Right.
We're lucky because we worked in animation and live action. So our live action projects, 2 were cancelled actually because of pandemic. Right. But we have more animation projects because we could, and animation as an industry is built so that you can work from home. You don't need to be in the studio. There are things which we're missing. For example, the development process where everybody's in a room where we're bouncing ideas. So we miss that. We use Discord. We have all these platforms, but it's not the same as the face-to-face thing. Yeah. So we're lucky in a way that our work, we do whatever work that comes our way to pay the bills. So we do design, we do animation for corporates, and hopefully after this, we're doing a live action short film in Sarawak, based on the Iban Underworld. So I'm looking forward to that. So that is a live action short film, our first live action short film.
Right.
So we're just waiting for MCO to lift, and then we'll be in Sarawak.
Fingers crossed. Right. Okay. All right. So that would be all, guys. Thanks so much to Mr. Irwan Junaidi for that extremely insightful sharing and talk. I'm inspired. Yeah. So this concludes the morning session for day 1 of our Telling Tales event, an initiative by UTAR Faculty of Creative Industries along with UTAR Center for Artistic Research, CFAR. Now, all of you guys, attendees, whatever session that we have now, if you've kind of missed portions of it, which I noticed some of the attendees have mentioned, do not worry, we'll be giving you links to all of the recorded videos. It will be up on the CFAR YouTube channel. Also, so now we shall now all have a break, lunch break, and also Friday prayers, which will be slightly longer. And our afternoon session shall begin at 2 p.m. Afterwards, we'll kick off with a talk by Professor Dr. Joyce C.H. Liu from the National Yang Ming Chiao Tung University in Taiwan on storytelling as artistic intervention and cultural critique, engaging with the coloniality in the inter-Asian context. Now, very interesting. So now to join the next session, we can use the earlier links that has been given to you. So if you're registered for day one, use back the day one link. The Zoom links will get you to any of the sessions today. I think if you are interested to have a day two, you can still continue to register after this and you get the link for day two. Yeah, so use the same link to enter the sessions afterwards. All right, so do stay tuned and we'll see you all again at 2 p.m. If you've got any questions, I know that some of you had questions I was not able to address to Mr. Irwan. He's given you his contact on LinkedIn, so do get in touch with him there. All right, so have an insightful afternoon ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you very much. Have a good lunch.